You've watched them laugh on the phone with a friend, chat easily with a neighbor, make small talk at a party like it's the most natural thing in the world. But the moment you try to talk about something real, something that matters, they disappear. Not physically. They're still sitting across from you, but you watch their eyes go flat. Their face goes blank. They give you nothing. One word answers. A shrug. Or worse, complete silence. They're in the room with you, but they're gone. And the silence that follows can last hours, sometimes days. Sometimes you're not even sure what you did. Sometimes you suspect they're not even sure what you did. You replay the conversation, looking for the landmine you must have stepped on. You try different approaches, softer, louder, more patient, more direct. Nothing works. The wall is up and you're standing on the other side of it alone. Here's what makes it worse. When they finally do start talking again, they often act like nothing happened, like you imagined the whole thing, and you start to wonder if maybe you did. Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe you're the difficult one. Maybe there's something uniquely wrong with you that makes them shut down. This video is going to explain what's actually happening in their brain when they go silent, why they can engage with everyone else but not you, what kind of childhood creates this pattern, and here's the part no one tells you, why your intimacy itself might be the trigger. Before we go further, I need to make an important distinction. There's a difference between taking space, stonewalling, and the silent treatment. They can look similar from the outside, but they're not the same thing. Taking space is healthy. It's communicated, I need an hour to calm down, and then I want to come back to this. There's a timeline. There's an intention to return. It's not punishment, it's regulation. Stonewalling is different. It's uncommunicated withdrawal. No timeline, no explanation. The person shuts down sometimes because they're overwhelmed, sometimes because they've learned it's the only way to survive conflict. It may not be intentional, but it leaves the other person stranded. The silent treatment is deliberate. It's a refusal to engage, often designed to punish, control, or force the other person into compliance. It's silence as a weapon. Here's the thing. These exist on a spectrum, and they can blur together. Sometimes what looks like manipulation is actually someone drowning in their own nervous system. Sometimes what started as genuine overwhelm has calcified into a control strategy over years of repetition. The question isn't always, which one is it? The deeper question is, what's happening in their nervous system that makes silence feel like the only option? Let's talk about the science. When conflict feels threatening, the brain doesn't process it as a conversation. It processes it as danger. And when the brain perceives danger, it triggers a survival response. Dr. John Gottman, who studied thousands of couples over decades, found that when someone stonewalls, their heart rate often exceeds 100 beats per minute. Stress hormones flood the system, cortisol, adrenaline. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thought, problem solving, empathy, it goes offline. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, takes over. This is what psychologist Daniel Goleman called an amygdala hijack. The emotional brain overwhelms the thinking brain before the thinking brain even knows what's happening. In that state, they're not choosing to ignore you. They literally cannot process what you're saying. The brain has shifted into survival mode, and survival mode has exactly three options: fight, flight, or freeze. Stonewalling is freeze. It's the nervous system hitting the emergency brake. But here's where it gets more interesting. There's a theory called polyvagal theory, developed by neuroscientist Stephen Porges, that explains why some people default to shutdown while others default to fighting or fleeing. According to this theory, our nervous system operates in three states. The first is ventral vagal. This is where we feel safe, connected, able to engage. We can have hard conversations from this state because our system isn't perceiving threat. The second state is sympathetic activation, fight or flight. This is where we get defensive, reactive, loud. The third state is dorsal vagal. This is shutdown, freeze, collapse. Here's what's crucial to understand. Dorsal vagal shutdown is the oldest survival response we have. It predates fight or flight. It's the play dead response. When an animal is caught by a predator and cannot fight or escape, it goes limp. It dissociates, it survives by disappearing. When your partner shuts down, their nervous system has decided, below the level of conscious thought, that this threat cannot be fought and cannot be fled. So it does the only thing left. It goes offline. It plays dead. They're not choosing to abandon you. Their body is trying to survive you. Now here's the question you're really asking. Why you? Why can they talk to everyone else? Why does their nervous system decide that you are the threat? The answer is almost paradoxical. It's because you matter most. Porges introduced a concept called neuroception, the nervous system's unconscious scanning for safety or danger. This happens below awareness. Your brain is constantly reading micro cues from the environment, tone of voice, facial tension, body language, emotional unpredictability, and it's making split-second decisions about whether you're safe or dangerous. With acquaintances, coworkers, casual friends, the stakes are low. If that conversation goes badly, it's uncomfortable but survivable. Their opinion of you isn't existential. But with you, the person they've built a life with, the person whose opinion shapes their sense of self, the person who could leave, the stakes are everything. Previous conflicts also create what we might call neural templates. If past conversations have gone badly, the brain starts expecting danger before the conversation even begins. It's not responding to what you're saying right now. It's responding to every hard conversation that came before. So the cruel irony is this. They shut down with you not because they don't care, but because they care so much that their nervous system can't handle the risk. Intimacy is the trigger. Vulnerability is the threat. You are both the person they most want to connect with and the person whose rejection would be most devastating. And so the system protects them from you by making connection impossible. Now let's talk about the different types of people who go silent. Not everyone who stonewalls is doing it for the same reason, and understanding the type helps you understand what's actually driving the behavior. The first type is the flooded one. This person is genuinely overwhelmed. They're not trying to punish you. They're not strategizing. Their nervous system has been hijacked, and they've lost access to words. If you could see inside their body during shutdown, you'd see a system in crisis. Heart racing, muscles tight, mind blank. They often feel shame afterward, but don't know how to explain what happened because they don't fully understand it themselves. The childhood origin for this type often involves growing up in a chaotic or high conflict home. When you're a child and the adults around you are explosive, unpredictable, or constantly fighting, shutdown becomes the only way to survive the noise. You learn to disappear inside yourself because engaging is dangerous. That adaptation made sense then. It's destroying their relationships now. The second type is the escaped one. This person learned early that conflict leads to pain, so they evacuate before it even arrives. They're not flooded in the moment. They're preemptively avoiding the flood. To them, withdrawal feels like self-protection, not aggression. They often genuinely don't realize the impact because, from inside their experience, it feels like they're just keeping themselves safe. The childhood origin here typically involves emotions being dismissed, punished, or weaponized. Maybe they were told they were too sensitive. Maybe their feelings were used against them later. Maybe vulnerability was met with mockery or rage. They learned that showing up emotionally gets you hurt, so they stopped showing up. The third type is the controller. This person uses silence strategically. It's not about overwhelm, it's about power. Silence ends the discussion. Silence punishes without leaving evidence. Silence forces the other person to chase, to apologize, to guess. They may not even be consciously manipulative. This might be so deeply ingrained that it feels automatic. But the effect is control. This type is often paired with other behaviors, minimizing your concerns, deflecting blame, making you question your own perceptions. The childhood origin often involves either being controlled by silence themselves, learning from a parent who wielded it as a weapon, or growing up in an environment where whoever stayed quiet longest won. They learned that silence is power, and they've carried that lesson into every relationship since. The fourth type is the protector. This one might surprise you. This person shuts down not to protect themselves, but to protect the relationship. They're terrified of their own anger. They believe that if they open their mouth, something destructive will come out, something that can't be taken back, something that will end everything. So they say nothing. They see their silence as sacrifice. They're falling on the grenade of their own emotions to keep from detonating. The childhood origin often involves witnessing explosive conflict that traumatized them. Maybe a parent who raged. Maybe fights that turned violent. Maybe words that destroyed things permanently. They learned that expressed anger is catastrophic, and they've been holding theirs in a white-knuckle grip ever since. Here's something important to understand. This pattern doesn't always end in divorce. That's the narrative we often hear. Gottman's research shows stonewalling predicts relationship failure, and that's true. But prediction isn't destiny. Some couples live with this pattern for 10, 20, 30 years. They don't leave. They adapt. A 20-year longitudinal study from UC Berkeley followed long-term married couples and found something remarkable. The couples who chronically stonewalled and stayed together developed physical health symptoms. Specifically, stonewalling predicted musculoskeletal problems, back pain, stiff joints, chronic muscle tension. The body holds what the mouth won't speak. The conflict doesn't disappear just because it isn't voiced. It relocates. Many of these couples become what researchers call housemates, not soulmates. They function. They coordinate logistics. They may even appear stable from the outside. But the emotional intimacy is gone. They've stopped expecting connection and settled for coexistence. They find fulfillment elsewhere, in friendships, children, work, hobbies, anywhere but the marriage. And here's the hardest part. The pattern becomes so normalized that it stops feeling like a problem. This is just how we argue. This is just who he is. We've been doing this for 15 years. Why would it change now? One person in a research study described it as 38 years of torture, but they didn't know until they read about stonewalling that it was a pattern with a name, a pattern that could potentially change. Surviving isn't thriving, and the cost of long-term stonewalling doesn't vanish just because the marriage endures. It shows up in your body. It shows up in the distance between you that everyone can feel but no one names. It shows up in your children, who are building their own templates for what love looks like based on what they see between you. There's another layer to this that makes it even more complicated. Stonewalling rarely exists in isolation. It's usually part of a dance, what researchers call the demand-withdraw pattern. Here's how it works. One partner seeks connection, resolution, engagement. They pursue. The other partner feels overwhelmed, criticized, or cornered. Yoke. They withdraw. The more one partner pursues, the more threatening it feels to the other, so they withdraw further. The more one partner withdraws, the more abandoned the other feels, so they pursue harder. It's a loop that feeds itself, and both people end up feeling like the victim of the other's behavior. Gottman's research found that this pattern, when left unaddressed, predicts divorce with alarming accuracy. But here's what's important. It doesn't matter who plays which role. The cycle itself is equally damaging, regardless of who's demanding and who's withdrawing. And often, the roles aren't even fixed. You might be the pursuer in conflict, but the withdrawer around intimacy. The roles can flip depending on the topic. And crucially, you probably didn't enter the relationship as pursuer and withdrawer. The relationship trained you into these positions over time. You became this together. So here's the reframe. If you're the one being stonewalled, their silence is not proof that you're unworthy of engagement. It's not evidence that you're too much, too needy, too difficult. It's proof that you matter so much their nervous system perceives you as the highest stakes person in their life. The shutdown isn't about your inadequacy. It's about the weight of your significance. If you're the one who shuts down, you're not broken. You're not bad at relationships. You're not choosing to hurt the person you love. Your brain learned, probably before you had words to understand why, that silence was safety, that disappearing was survival, that conflict was a fire you could only escape by leaving your body, that adaptation kept you alive once, but it's now protecting you from the very thing you want most: connection, intimacy, being truly known by another person. The strategy that saved you has become the wall that isolates you. So what do? How does this change? If you're the person who shuts down, the first step is learning your warning signs. What happens in your body before you go silent? Racing heart, tightness in your chest, a feeling of shrinking, tunnel vision, the urge to escape. The sooner you can recognize the flood coming, the sooner you can intervene. When you feel it starting, request a break, but with a return time. This is crucial. I need 20 minutes. I'm not abandoning this conversation. I need to calm my system down, and then I want to come back. That's different from disappearing. That's taking responsibility for your nervous system while staying committed to the relationship. Practice staying present in low stakes discomfort. Build your tolerance, your window of tolerance. The amount of emotional intensity you can handle without shutting down can expand, but it expands through practice, not avoidance. And consider therapy, not because you're broken, but because this pattern usually has roots that go deep. Understanding the origin story, what your shutdown was originally protecting you from, can unlock something that willpower alone cannot. If you're the one being stonewalled, stop pursuing harder. I know this feels counterintuitive. When someone withdraws, every instinct says, chase them, get louder, make them engage. But pursuit deepens withdrawal. The harder you push, the more threatening you become, the thicker the wall gets. Instead, try naming what you're experiencing without attacking. I notice we've stopped talking. That's hard for me. Not accusatory, not demanding, just honest about your own experience. Create space rather than filling silence with your anxiety. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the silence exist without trying to fix it immediately. Get support for yourself. Talk to a therapist. Lean on trusted friends. You cannot heal this pattern alone, and you cannot love someone out of their nervous system's survival strategies. This is not your failing, but it is your reality, and you need people who can help you navigate it, for both of you. Understand that this is a nervous system problem before it's a communication problem. You can learn all the I statements and active listening techniques in the world, but if one person's system is in survival mode, no communication strategy will land. The goal isn't better scripts. The goal is making the relationship feel safe enough that neither of you needs to disappear. Consider couples therapy, specifically modalities like emotionally focused therapy that address the attachment patterns underneath the conflict. This pattern rarely shifts without outside help. That's not a moral failing. It's just the nature of how deeply these patterns are wired. If you've lived with this pattern, whether you're the one who goes silent or the one standing in the silence wondering what you did, you're not alone. You're not crazy, and you're not doomed. But you are at a crossroads. You can keep the pattern and pay the cost in your body, in your intimacy, in the distance that grows a little wider every time the wall goes up. Or you can start the work of understanding what the silence is actually protecting and whether that protection is still serving you. If this describes something you've experienced, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Are you the pursuer or the withdrawer? Or do you play both roles depending on the situation? What did this video help you understand that you didn't have words for before? And if this is the first video of mine you've seen, consider subscribing. This channel is about the patterns that run underneath our behavior. The ones we inherited, the ones we learned, and the ones we can finally choose to change. Thanks for watching. This is Pattern Logic over and out.